Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Katherine Kelly, and I want to bring you a little information about why I am so passionate about bringing the psychology and the soul together. Now, this is not for the first time, and so I want to give you a background on this. But it is not the first time that someone has really started to talk about how the soul is related to psychology. And first, I'm going to give you a little history on me, and then I'm going to go back through just briefly the history of how psychology became a field. And so, my own history, because I think that's really helpful in people understanding why I am so passionate about doing this. So, all the way back to high school, my junior year in high school, I took an honor psychology class. And for whatever reason, within about 2 weeks, 1 week, I don't know, it was very quick, I realized, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, I know that is highly unusual. It is not typical for people to understand what they were supposed to do for the rest of their lives all the way back then. But I knew. And I was fascinated by all of the theories. People had always come to talk to me. People leaned on me. So it was just very natural for me to feel like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so from that point on, I was reading books about psychology. I was reading way back in high school. I was reading books about birth order and how that affects people. I was reading books on family dynamics. I was reading stuff that most people don't read back then, but it was because I was so fascinated with how humans grow and heal. So that was junior in high school. Um, Over time, also in high school, I was just almost obsessed with the idea of evolution. My freshman year in high school, I took a biology class, biology 101. I don't know what it was. Second year, my sophomore year, I took another biology class. I guess that was biology 2. And I was obsessed with evolution. I read everything I could about evolution. I wrote my term papers on things like mummification and how it was all very related to the spiritual beliefs at the time. It was just one of those things where at the time I had no idea that it would end up bringing me to where I was, but I was just drawn. Apparently, my soul was in charge back then too. So I was just so drawn to both the idea of evolution and just how the psyche worked. So in undergrad, I went to an undergraduate institution that was actually a non-traditional educational system. It was mostly for older people. I fit right in because I've always been more mature than my age. I never really fit in my college, high school or college group as far as maturity. And so I fit right in, and most of my friends were actually a fair bit older than me. And I loved it. And again, back then I was also obsessed with geology and how the earth was developed and how the stratification of the different layers of earth came together. I had no idea that it would come together to where I am now. And the reason I say that is I do love crystals. I love the earth. I understand now spiritually why I'm so connected with the earth. And that's a whole other video. The reason I'm bringing this all to mind is that there's so much to be learned about why we need to bring the soul back. We need to bring it back to the forefront of medical treatment. We have to bring it back to the forefront of basically our day-to-day lives. We have to bring it back to psychological treatment. We have to bring the soul back. So here's the historical part. And I've said this a couple times in different videos, but from a medical perspective, the soul was present from day one. So the medical field was formed about 2,400 years ago. That is a long time ago. Now, obviously, modern medicine is very different than it was back then. But way back in 400-ish BC, Hippocrates, who is known as the father of medicine, was basically saying in every paper he wrote, and every book he wrote, and everything he said was that the soul was present in every aspect of who we are, in every aspect of our health, in every organ of who we are, in every illness of what we experience. It was it was the thing of the day. So all of his buddies, and I keep saying buddies, so Plato and Socrates and Galen and all of the people that were around him at the time, all of his mentees, everybody was talking about the soul as part of healing. Fast forward, it lost its way, and the more and more that they modernized medicine, the more they turned it into a research experience, you lost the experience of the soul. And so it took several hundred years for that to happen, but the soul has not been present in medical literature for a very long time. You get sprinklings of it here and there, but you really don't understand. Practitioners don't get to understand how the soul functions as part of our everyday health. Now, Also, looking at the soul of psychology, looking at it from the perspective of the field of psychology and how psychology was formed. Psychology is not a really old field. It has really only been around for 160, 170 years. And yet it was the turn of the century, of the basically of the 1900s, that most of the psychological theories were formed. This is really where they started to take root. And one of the founding fathers, Carl Jung, was a basically German psychoanalyst, and he really went into the depth of the soul too. And he was the main person, the main physician, the main psychiatrist at the time that emphasized the fact that the soul was such a big part of healing. He had his own past life experiences. He would show up in different places that he would travel, and he would have spontaneous experiences of memories of things that he couldn't have known in this lifetime. And then he'd go check them out, and sure enough, they checked out. He also very much believed in astrology and how much astrological personality has to do with how we cope, how we function. I never learned any of those parts of his work in my training because that was all filtered out. That is not in the history, basically, of how the psychological field was built. But it was built on the foundation. So we have the foundation of modern medicine that was built 2,400 years ago on the basis of the soul. We have the psychological field that was built on the basis of the soul. That's, again, 160 years old. But it's absolutely nowhere in our training unless you go to a specialized program that may mention it or may train you more and more about that. But the traditional programs do not teach this. So, what do psychology and the soul have in common? The psyche was always part of what was taught in psychological training. So, the psyche is not the same thing as the soul. The psyche is basically the totality of everything from a consciousness perspective, from a cognitive perspective. So, it's everything about what we think and what we believe and what we perceive. But the soul encompasses everything we experience from the body perspective, from the mind perspective, so the psyche, and then from the experiential and existential experiences that we have that extend beyond both the body and the mind. And so this is why I'm so passionate about talking about the soul of psychology and also so passionate about bringing the soul back because day in and day out, I have clients coming to me. I have other health practitioners coming to me. I have colleagues knocking on my door saying, okay, so how can I understand this from a soul level? I know that something else is going on. I had a client yesterday, a psychotherapy client, tell me that she's been struggling for ages with a lot of concerns about anxiety and OCD and this and that. And then she said, but I know there's got to be something deeper. There's something beyond what's happening in what has happened in this lifetime. And I started to explain to her how it's all connected. And so people are starting to seek this information more and more. And I want to give you some statistics about this because it's fascinating. So there are around 333 million Americans, and from the census perspective. So not quite 350 million, but 335 million Americans. The research is showing that and this is fun to say, that at least 20 to 25, 27% of Americans seek some form of soul healing modality every year. So 22 to 25, 27%, that is a lot of Americans. That's around 75 million Americans are already searching out soul healing practices. So what does that mean? So some of them are seeking intuitive counseling, so psychic readings, Akashic record readings, past life readings, all those kinds of things. Some of them are seeking those. Some of them are seeking shamanic practitioners who can help them release or retrieve parts of their lives that they have lost. Reiki and other forms of energy work. For the practitioners who are seasoned and who have been doing this for a while, they are having spiritual experiences as well as their clients are having spiritual experiences while the work is being done. And the intuition of what needs to happen for those patients or those clients is coming through to help them even more. We have other forms of soul healing, Chinese medicine, Qigong, and Tai Chi. A lot of the practitioners are really focused on helping people understand from a deeper level what is going on from the body and the mind. So I could go on and on and on. Native American medicine. There's so many different ways that psychology is connected to the soul. And it is so important that we get the soul back to the forefront. I recently did a search. I was just very curious, how many countries, how many cultures actually use the word soul? And there's, and I don't know how many cultures are considered around the world. There's probably thousands of them. But it's really interesting because almost every country, not every country, but almost every country has a word for soul. And I find that beautiful and I find that fascinating. And I also find that a little sad that the word exists, but very few people use them. So, how do we bring this thing back? How do we bring the soul back? And I think basically you have to start thinking about your own experiences that are unexplainable by anything else. I Now, granted, a lot of people come to me because they know that I'm going to accept whatever they have to say. I have people saying, I know this is going to sound crazy. And I'll say, no, probably not. And then they will tell me about an experience they've had with the soul of a deceased loved one, or they will start to have these intuitive kind of experiences and not really know what to do with them, like premonitions, or they can have experiences of knowing that, wow, this is happening for this other person and they live 2 states away. So there's all of this energy that's building about this whole idea of soul and whole idea of how we bring this back. And I will tell you hands down that I really think if we look at the state of the world, the biggest problem with what's going on in the world is that so many people are disconnected from their souls. If we really have 8.6 billion people on this planet, then we have to think about how many of them are actually connected with their souls. Very, very few of them. And we think about all of the people who are doing these terrible things in the world. Some of our political leaders are really willing and capable of doing some terrible things. And people, when they come to me and they're trying to understand it, I try to help them understand that their souls are so fractured, their souls are so broken, their souls are so wounded that they can't even see through it. They can't connect with themselves. So they're more than willing to create chaos and pain in other people's lives. So that is another reason we have to bring the soul back into psychology. We have to bring it back into healing. We have to bring it back into modern medicine because so much is being lost and so much is getting past basically the healing process. And that's why the healing process in so many ways in the traditional world are falling short. So it's just so important for us to bring it back. And that's why I'm on this mission, but it just feels like my soul's purpose is all about bringing that soul back to people. So I want you to just think about these facts and think about the experiences that you've had that didn't make sense. Think about the times where your gut was like, ooh, I don't know why, but I'm not supposed to go down that path or go take this road instead of, this way to work. Think about that. Think about the experiences you have where you can sense when something's going to happen or when someone's going to call you and then boom, they call you. That is the soul speaking. That is you connecting in. That is one way in which we can start integrating the soul back into life. Ancient cultures were so connected with both their souls, with other people's souls, with the earth, with the stars, and yet we have lost that. And it's a travesty that we've lost that. But it is the hopeful part of me that we can bring that back and resurrect the soul to the rightful place. So just some fodder for you to think about, for growth and to think about how you can start integrating the soul back into your life. So have a wonderful day. Think soul, be soul, experience soul, and just bring that sage wisdom back because that is really how we can apply it to modern day and make our lives easier. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.